All right. So thanks everyone for coming. We're really excited today to have Dr. Michael Williams with us. As we've been chatting about for the last few minutes, he's got a really great talk that some members here have seen before when it was presented to the Rochester section or at other venues on continuing the search for equity, advancing the need for more representation of Black scientists in optics and photonics. So we're really excited about this topic. It's obviously an important and critical part of the conversation of how we get better in our industry about things we know that we need to do better. So we're excited for that. But before we move into that, there's a few announcements for the evening about NES-OSA business. We'd like to announce the speakers and dates for the April and May meetings. On April 21st, Bob Schuline from MIT Lincoln Labs will be giving a talk on optical communications for human space exploration. That's a laser communication talk. And knowing what I know of Bob's work, that's going to be an excellent and very interesting talk about what we do to expand the range and technology involved in laser communication. So I'm very excited about that one. That talk will be remote. We're continuing to do remote meetings as the usual MIT Lincoln Laboratory venue is still not able to accommodate the public. However, our May meeting will be a hybrid meeting. We're going to be meeting at the Optical headquarters just north of the city. And that will be both by Zoom for those who still choose to watch virtually or in person. This will be the final meeting before summer break. And that talk will be Daniel Eisenstein. I don't know the topic of that talk. David, can you elucidate what that one will be about? You're muted.
Unmute myself. Yeah. That's going to be about the users of the Webb telescope. So he was one of 5 Boston area researchers who was featured in a Boston Globe article about the research community using Webb. So it should be a very exciting talk. He has a number of experiments that he intends to do with that, or his postdocs do.
Excellent. That should be a lot of fun. On the topic of the last meetings of the year, the 2021-2022 NES-OSA season is wrapping up. And as we transition into the 2022-2023 year, we're going to need a new council. So we're going to have NES-OSA elections. Ballots will be sent out approximately next month, depending on when we get our act together. We have a council that you can be a part of. Yes, you listening here, if you're a dues paying member and want to be a part of the leadership team of NES-OSA, we'd like your involvement. If you've got great ideas for how to move this organization forward, please reach out to NES-OSA at nesosa.org. If you want to nominate yourself or a friend, please get that friend's consent before you nominate them. No pranks, please. We would also like to take this time to encourage people, if you have not paid your dues for this year, to pay your dues, as only dues-paying members can vote or hold office. I know that we've often run afoul of that in the past, but we'll be sending out a dues payment reminder about the same time to encourage folks to get in there. A quick order of business is that a previous NES-OSA speaker and, as a subnote, a Nobel Prize winner in physics, has been featured in the New York Times crossword. Donna Strickland was the center clue of the New York Times crossword on International Women's Day, featuring prominent Nobel laureates. We're proud that NES-OSA alumni have been featured in the New York Times crossword now. We're sponsors of several Massachusetts state science fairs. We've continued to fund prizes for various regional and state level science fairs here in the state of Massachusetts. They're looking for judges. If you're interested in virtually judging science fair entries and you have a degree in science and a little bit of experience, we really encourage participation. We've got 2 state level science fairs that we are sponsoring prizes for, and I think both of them need judges to select awardees. We can assign that duty to sort of the institutional judges, or we can do it ourselves. So if you have any interest in this, either reach out to us at nesosa.org, nesosa@nesosa.org, or contact them directly at info@scifair.com to get more information on the criteria and what would be involved in that. But we'd really encourage at least someone from our organization to represent us. Also, the Massachusetts Metro-North STEM Network is going to be looking for panel speakers talking about their experience in STEM careers. If you have an interesting career path into STEM and would like to speak to youths who might be interested in or engaged in learning about career opportunities, this would be a great opportunity. So if you have any interest in being part of this panel, also please reach out to us at nesosa@nesosa.org. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Michael. I think we've already gotten the introduction to Michael. He needs no introduction. He's a man prominent as an OSA ambassador, or sorry, Optica ambassador. He's going to be giving a great talk tonight. And so with that, Michael, take it away.
Okay, thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you all today. I really am excited about talking to you, and just to let you know, this talk, some things about this talk will be a little bit uncomfortable, but I feel that a lot of things need to be said in order for us to grow as an Optic Society. And so I fully appreciate Optica for supporting me in this, that I'm able to give talk to different people, different chapters, different sections, and to promote more of a cohesive ethnic diversity and support the equity that needs to be upheld as a result of us being an international society. So I'd like to share my screen and we can begin. Okay, let me know if everybody can see the screen. Can someone say?
Yep, we can see it. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. All right, let's begin. So first off, I'd like to introduce myself for those of you who don't really know much about me, and I would like to share my road to the PhD through the unconventional journey through historically Black colleges and universities, particularly Morehouse College, Fisk University, and Delaware Sate University. I'd like to share how I became an Optica ambassador last year in 2021. It was highly influenced by the article published by Optica. It was entitled "In Search of Equity in the Optics and Photonics News." And that led to being influenced also by the 2020 protests against systemic racism. I'd like to share how the hashtags that were established during that time, Black in the Ivory, Shut Down STEM, Strike for Black Lives, how they were promoted by the Black scientific community, and how Optica is doing its own campaign in amplifying Black voices in optics. And I will conclude with some Q&A. So first and foremost, I am from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, which is smack dab right here. And I am a proud Philadelphian. I love the Philadelphia Eagles. And this is myself in Love Park in downtown Center City, Philadelphia. And this is just a snapshot of me in my personality. I'm very jovial. I love life. And I'm just very, very, full of joy all the time. Particularly my journey as a scientist began at a science museum here in Philadelphia named the Franklin Institute Science Museum. It is one of the nation's most hands-on science museums. It is here that I was able to become a junior scientist in a program called PACS. It stands for Partnerships for Achieving Careers in Technology and Science, which allowed me to go through the entire museum and do scientific demonstrations on the museum floor. And there's a particular exhibit here at the Franklin Institute that is the main attraction of the museum, and it is the gigantic heart that people are able to walk through and see how the blood flows in each 4 chambers of the heart. And so it was here that I established a love for science communication and research. And so currently, I am in New England, in Boston, well, particularly in Brookline, working with my colleague Fred Perry here in Boston Electronics. If you don't know what Boston Electronics is, it is a photonics distribution company. We enable our customers to develop and manufacture superior products, and we help them perform cutting-edge research by providing them with a broad range of electro-optical solutions and knowledgeable application support. And so here is a list of all of our partners. Many of our partners are primarily international companies that depend on us to help build the US market for them. And so we have a wide range of expertise regarding terahertz, regarding thermal imaging, remote gas, chemical sensing and monitoring. So feel free to talk to myself or Fred if you have any particular interest in any of our products. And so let's start in the beginning. After I graduated high school in Philadelphia, I went to Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. And Morehouse College is specifically known for being the only historically Black college or college in general, mainly for African-American men. And there are particularly a notable alumni that had graduated from Morehouse. For example, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Spike Lee, and Samuel L. Jackson. And if I could borrow his voice from the Avengers, by saying this line, there was an idea, I say this line, there was an ideal. And the ideal was called the Morehouse Man. The Morehouse Man was the epitome of excellence in all facets of life, including academics, professional aspirations, family devotion, community service, and leadership. The Morehouse Man was the embodiment of integrity, honesty, respect, resourcefulness, poise, and self-discipline. And students were transformed by these standards. And it was here at Morehouse that I saw my first images of Black scientists and Black engineers who looked like me, could embrace Black culture and do quality science at the same time. And so here are a few images of Morehouse. This is on the picture on the left is a picture of Graves Hall, is one of our residential dorms. There's a grave in the front with a statue of one of the greatest presidents of Morehouse College, Dr. Benjamin Elijah Mays. The statue on the right is a statue of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in front of the Martin Luther King International Chapel. And here am I, all in my Morehouse gap for our annual homecoming celebrations every year. And so my next step was going to Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee. And Fisk University is particularly famous for being the #1 producer of Black students earning their master's degrees. And actually one other tidbit about Fisk University, you know how Nashville is considered to be a music city. Well, actually it wasn't necessarily about the advancement of the music industry at Nashville. The Fisk Jubilee Singers brought that name to Nashville. Particularly, there's a picture of the Jubilee Singers in the logo for Fisk. The Fisk Jubilee Singers brought that recognition to Nashville. And particularly, I went here as part of a program called the Fisk Vanderbilt Masters to PhD Bridge Program, which was created to improve the demographic representation of underrepresented minorities in STEM. And it has 83% PhD success rate, which is greater than the national average. And so here am I in my first year, and you can see I am fully dressed in my Morehouse suit. And also I participated in some of the brochures of the Fisk Vanderbilt Bridge Program. And there am I here in my Morehouse suit and tie. And it was here that I learned that you can be genuine people. You can have a genuine personality doing science because I saw that my advisors and the people that were head of the program, they really cared about my well-being. It wasn't just all academics. They really care for me holistically. And that's why I really uphold this bridge program to a high regard wherever I go. And last but not least, I finalized my HBCU road here with earning my doctorate degree at Delaware Sate University in Dover, Delaware. I'm not sure anyone knows where Dover, Delaware is, but Delaware Sate University is the only HBCU that offers a PhD in optics, and it's the only HBCU that has a state-of-the-art optics research facility called OSCAR. And there I did my dissertation on the investigations of the linear, nonlinear, and forensic optical properties of nanodiamonds for photonics applications. And so here is a picture of our research facility. And it was here at Delaware State that I became involved in Optica, and during that time was called OSA. And I was able to do all kinds of different things because I joined a international organization like Optica. For example, I participated in the congressional visit that was a joint initiative with Optica and SPIE regarding promoting the National Photonics Initiative. And also being at DSU allowed me to have particular experience doing internships at NASA Goddard. And this is a picture of myself here winning the Award of Excellence for that year. And so the whole entire experience of being at historically Black colleges really enriched me as an adult and as a scientist. And if you are unfamiliar of the reasons of why HBCUs were created, well, we have to understand that prior to the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s, Black people were considered intellectually inferior and socially and morally depraved. And it was mainly because of the state and local laws that reinforced racial segregation and discrimination back then, namely called Jim Crow. Black people were systematically and legally denied entry in white colleges and universities. So as a response, many Black and some benevolent white people created and established several colleges for Black education, academic achievement, and scholarship. And so the whole road was a 13-year journey that I completed from 2005 to 2018. Yes, it was long and arduous, but here are my graduation photos. Here am I at Morehouse College. Here am I at Fisk University. And last but not least, at Delaware Sate University. So the legacy of historically Black colleges is that it can account to 50% of all Black professionals. And so now the next step of my journey involves becoming an ambassador for Optica. And so I'd like to share a few moments with you as if you allow me to be your narrator to explain the essence of the new branding and why it has to be in this image the way it is. So let's start here. Okay. So with over 100 years of history, Optica has prided itself as being the leading global professional association in optics and photonics. Optica publishes quality research and enables inspiring interactions at meetings and networking events. And it provides dedicated resources into helping optics and photonics professionals amplify their career. And so Optica is much more than just a membership organization. We are a trusted source for timely, relevant, and high quality information for all types of optics and photonics professionals. We enable the community to build quality relationships with our colleagues, our customers, and leaders from around the world. And Optica has had a critical role in the expansion of optics and photonics. There's been a growth in light science-based technology that was evidenced by a growth of 24% in the last 5 years. And so we are now part of a $500 billion global industry. And as the field has grown, so has our society. With over 400 student chapters in more than 60 countries. And the progress has always been remarkable. And today we engage with more than 400,000 people across 93% of the globe. And so today, Optica's goals as the leading forum for light science and technology are as follows. Number one, upholding excellence wherever it is found within the world. Number 2, empowering discovery and innovation by including dedicated, driven, hardworking people in our community from across the world and to work on the discoveries of tomorrow. And number 3, connecting with our worldwide community through science in a constantly changing world. And number 4, advocating for those in our field and to ensure that our community grows and our society thrives. And so being an Optica ambassador has really been a treat for me. I mean, I'm able to meet different people and network with different people, including Nobel laureates and different Optica leaders. And so being an ambassador, I'm able to share my experiences and my different perspectives with students and early career professionals and provide career advice, technical knowledge, and professional development wherever I'm able to do so. But I want you to understand that prior to 2020, I did not have a particular interest in becoming an Optical ambassador, mainly because I did not see anyone who looked like me be an ambassador prior to 2020. But what happened was during the time when George Floyd, when people were marching with George Floyd all over the world, the Optica ambassadors, or the OSA ambassadors at the time, released this statement, and I read, "Science lives in a society affected by and in many ways built upon systemic racism. As OSA ambassadors, we are committed to fighting for justice, equality, integrity, and inclusivity in the scientific community and beyond. We recognize we need to do more by sustainably supporting and amplifying and promoting Black scientists, engineers, and students. Black Lives Matter." So this was huge for me because I did not see any other society or organization make such a bold statement about supporting Black scientists like these. And so if you look at the article that was published during that time, it was a response to the death of George Floyd, which, in quote, prompted considerable public soul searching by US companies and institutions regarding the inadequacy of their own efforts toward equity and inclusion. And there was a study that was shown in this article, and the study was called the Diversity Innovation Paradox. So at Stanford, it found that demographically underrepresented students in PhD programs, they tend to innovate at higher rates than the majority students, but yet owing to deeply entrenched biases, minority students' contributions tend to be discounted and devalued in the same settings. And so if you want to have more proof regarding the statement, there was an article or a journal entry that describes what happened when we have gender and race stereotypes impacting the advancement of scholars. And so biology and physics professors at 8 large public US research universities were asked to read one of 8 identical CVs depicting a hypothetical doctoral graduate applying for a postdoc in their field. And they will rate them for competence, hireability, and likability. The candidate's name on the CV was used to manipulate race and gender, with all other aspects of the CV being held constant across conditions. So again, the only thing that was manipulated was the person's name and gender to manipulate race. The physics faculty, they rated the Asian and white candidates as more competent and hireable than the Black and Latinx candidates. And they all had the same aspects of the CV, meaning they had the same accomplishments, the same internships, the same paper published. Everything was the same except the race of the person's name to manipulate race and gender. And so, I mean, also when you look at Black women and Latinx and women and men candidates were rated the lowest in hireability compared to all others. So what this shows us is that science has a racism problem. And this was published by the Cell editorial team. And they blatantly say that they were part of the problem. They were 13 scientists and none of them are Black. And they said it should not have taken the recent deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery for us to speak and to act. We are asking ourselves, what can we do to be stronger allies, stronger anti-racists? And so if we want to ask ourselves an honest question, are we really struck regarding what happened to these three people? Because you have to understand, when these people were murdered within a 4-month time frame, it incited the largest racial justice protest ever recorded in the United States. And so when things happen like this is why Black people feel we do not matter, because we're constantly having to prove our importance, our competence, our relevance, and our existence. And sometimes we feel that we have to walk on eggshells to hold our particular jobs and positions, because we think that the common thought is that we are expendable. But do you have to understand that this has been going on in protesting for over like close to like 80 years now? This is when Dr. Martin Luther King was still alive, and there were marches for civil rights. And the picture on the right is a picture when they were marching for Black Lives Matter. And you could say that there has been some improvement regarding the demographics you see on the left and the right, but you have to understand they're still marching for the exact same thing. But this is not a localized event that just happened in America. This is a pain that was felt all over the entire world. The protests you saw, even the rage of mayhem in the form of rioting and looting, and the tears of all the Black men and women from around the world, none of this explosive behavior didn't just spontaneously occur. They were the result of a racist system of ethnic hatred against dark people of color that had figuratively had their knee on our necks for far too long. And the powder keg, that if you will, the explosiveness, was the result of seeing another Black man being killed on camera by a police officer, and no one did anything to stop him. And the anger that you saw is that so many policemen were acquitted over the years for their murders by white jury members in a broken judicial system who also had racist presuppositions against Black people. And so when you look at the effectiveness of what happened in 2020, there was a protest for George Floyd in every state of the United States. This has not ever happened before, but it expanded beyond the United States. It went over the entire world in places that do not have a large demographic of Black people as the population, in places like Seoul, Korea, Berlin, Germany, Dublin, Ireland, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, London, England, even in Iran even. All of these people, they felt the pain of a Black man being killed by a police officer. But you have to understand that what happened to George Floyd wasn't just for people who were just marching in the streets, or just a Black man who were in the streets or were uneducated. This right here is Dr. Lawrence Crosby. In 2015, he was a Ph.D. student at the time at Northwestern University. And he was racially profiled by a white woman because she thought he was trying to burglarize someone else's car, but that was his own car. The woman followed Crosby in her own car as he drove from his apartment to Northwestern's science building, and she gave the police his location. He got out of the car with his hands raised after being stopped by the police, but he was tackled because he failed to immediately obey orders to get on the ground. Even when they determined that the car belonged to Crosby, they still charged him anyhow with disobeying officers and resisting arrest. But the judge acquitted him, and he filed a lawsuit against the police force, and he settled for $1.25 million. So you have to understand this young man could have been George Floyd. And when we look at the lifetime risk of being killed by the police in the United States, African Americans, they oversaturate the entire data that you see here. And it's so disheartening when we see that, when we see things like this. It also look at the inequities that we see in science. And so when we look at the amount of scientists and engineers working in science and engineering occupations, and this was back in 2015, we have white men comprising nearly 50% of all occupations, while you see Black men and Black women only holding 3% and only 2%. The number of the US undergraduate degrees in physics had tripled by 2020 compared to 1999. But even though the amount of Black bachelor's degrees increased, the share of the total had plummeted. And this was over 20 years. And so you look at the graph on the right, you can look at the number one, look at the top 10 producers of Black physics majors. They're all HBCUs. And particularly the number one producer of Black physics majors is Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. But we also look at the gap between other minorities as well. We see over a 20-year period, Black people earning their PhDs, it has not risen, particularly in the last 20 years. While our Hispanic colleagues, their numbers have particularly grown over the last 20 years. You also look at the amount of physics degrees being earned in a 5-year average, and particularly I fit in this data in this bar graph here because I earned my PhD in 2018, and so I'm just comprising of less than 3% of all Black PhDs, and we look at the Black demographics according to the census. Black demographics comprise of 13.4% of the populace in the United States. Also, when we look at well, I actually want to make sure we understand this. So again, myself earning a PhD in physics in 2018, I'm only one of 9 people in a 2-year average, and I comprise of less than 1% of all physics PhDs. There's something wrong here. And we need to address some of the factors of why we don't see many African Americans earning the PhDs in physics. So we can look at the fact that there's almost no support systems in regarding academic or even a personal support system in academia, which also can lead to some sort of exclusion, saying that many Black professors or even Black students, they don't have the amount of resources that other students receive. And it can lead to a sense of not feeling we belong here. And a lot of people, they wrestle with this often because it feels that nobody wants to fight for them. Now, we can also look at the issue regarding systemic poverty in the United States, which can also lead to the lack of education and preparation for students taking algebra and calculus courses to ready them for college in order to join into the global arena of physics. Physics can be seen as also being as an elitist field only for the racial majority due to implicit bias, which unfortunately leads to imposter syndrome. It leads to feeling that I do not deserve the position I earned respectfully because of the hard work I've done. But a lot of people feel that I still do not earn it, mainly because I am Black. And they feel that someone else could do it better than I can, because they almost am hoping that I fail so that they will be proven right. And we also look at the lack of access to opportunities due to systems purposefully excluding Black academics from succeeding and advancing. So if you're unfamiliar with Nicole Hannah-Jones, Nicole Hannah-Jones is a Pulitzer Prize winning reporter for the New York Times. She had been covering racial injustice over a 20-year career in investigative journalism, and she was denied tenure at the University of North Carolina. And she rightfully earned that position. The only reason why they even considered offering it back to her was because of weeks of protests by the students and all the news headlines showing people about the scandal that caused immense pressure. And this was all because she had founded the 1619 Project, which was her groundbreaking work on the bitter legacy of slavery. And to feel that she rightfully earned that position, but they did not give it to her because they felt it was too controversial, she took her work to Howard University, which is also an historically Black college and university in Washington, D.C., because she knew her work there would be celebrated and wanted. And so when things like that happens, it produces a sense of invisibility, as if I am not seen by my colleagues, or even for people looking towards the future, they don't see any particular success stories of Black PhDs in STEM, because of many people who are on that road, they are continually bullied out of their PhD journey, mainly because people don't believe they belong there. And we can also look at the emotional, mental, and psychological microaggressions that a lot of people receive from their peers and professors. And here are some that I have heard in the past. Why do you care what happens out there? As if, why do you care what happens to the Black people out on the street? And this was the time when Freddie Gray was murdered by the police in Baltimore. And this tells me that you have no empathy for any of our well-being as a Black scientist, because you believe that we are above the general populace, that we are above them because we are physicists. There's almost saying that you view yourself as a supremacist, because you feel that you're above the general populace. So why do you care what happens out there? You are a researcher. And is this all that because you want us to just focus on the science because you believe science is colorblind? But let's look at that term right there, colorblind, meaning that you're not racist, you don't see color, you're colorblind. That means you have no acknowledgement of the harassment, the pain, and the strain that one has to go through to being Black in America, especially being Black in science. Because you always have to prove that we are competent, that we are intelligent in order for us to get respect. Or I've heard people say this to me, you're very articulate for a Black man. You speak so eloquently for a Black man. That means you have had low expectations of the way I can speak, my articulation, my professionalism, and the way I was educated. And we can also look at gaslighting, which by definition is manipulating someone into thinking they are wrong, even when they're right. It's to say that you saying to me, oh, that's not what happened, or you're imagining it. A lot of people that go through a lot of mental health issues because of this, because of people literally gaslighting them when they're confronted by their conduct. And we can also look at this particular reference regarding racial microaggressions on the college campus. And so there was a day back in 2020 where people were encouraged, highly encouraged, to shut down STEM. This was promoted by Dr. Brian Nord. He's a physicist at Fermilab, and Dr. Shonda Prescott Weinstein. She's a cosmologist at the University of New Hampshire. And in the quote, in the wake of the recent murders, most recent murders of Black people in the US, it is clear that white and other non-Black people have to step up and do the work to eradicate anti-Black racism. As members of the global academic and STEM communities, we have an enormous ethical obligation to stop doing business as usual. However, a lot of people still say that this is all just critical race theory. Can you substantiate these claims? And so I want to bring your attention to the Black in the Ivory stories that were published on Twitter starting in 2020. And these were all testimonies of all the emotional and psychological abuse that a lot of people have gone through, ranging from microaggressions to overly physical threats. A former senior professor asked me to stay after a faculty meeting. When others left, he said that he had seen a documentary about Black women sewing on other people's hair, and he yanked mine and said, "Is this real?" Campus police will follow Black male grad students around campus. When they graduated to physically accosting us, we complained. The dean of the medical school said, maybe we should wear ties so that they know we're students and not custodial staff. Being Black in academia is constantly seeing people who have excluded you promoting themselves as leaders in inclusion and diversity. It's watching people use the success you have achieved in spite of them as evidence that they support Black people. Feeling dread every time you have to ask a professor to re-explain something out of fear of being looked at like you're dumb, or met with, maybe this isn't the right field for you, while your peers receive enthusiastic responses for asking the same questions. Being Black in the Ivory is being told by a senior white woman professor, of course, NSF will fund your career award, you are a Black woman. In one fell swoop, invalidating my hard work, expertise, position in the academy, and recognition that I earned. Is being invited to give a talk at a great financial cost to the host department, only to be mistaken for a PhD student coming for an interview. Is finally mustering the courage to tell your advisor that you're experiencing microaggressions in your research group, only for your advisor to tell you that the group members didn't mean it, or you're just over exaggerating. This is an example of gaslighting. And this is a non-Black person explaining his experience of his friend who dropped out because of his advisor. And this is the response. What you're reading in Black in the Ivory has two filters that suggest the situation may be even worse than it appears. One, survivor bias. You're seeing the people who stayed. And two, publication bias, the stories that feel safe enough to share publicly. And this hits home because we're close to Harvard here. This person said, a week after I got my acceptance letter to Harvard Physics PhD program, students made sure to inform me that it was because there were no Black women in physics. And the response to that was, I've almost never accomplished something without someone telling me I was the diversity hire, as if my application materials were just a picture of my face. Now, this particular medical journal entry is really offensive, because if you see on the bottom, it says medical interventions that take less than 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Now, to put it into context, George Floyd had his neck being pressed onto him by the officer Derek Chauvin for 8 minutes and 46 seconds before George died. And this entry had no reference to George Floyd, nor the racial injustice or anything like that regarding what happened. And so when you see things that are being published like this, you have to ask yourself, who is promoting these things? And if this is actually something they really truly believe, they don't really care about how Black people will react. We continue on. Black in the Ivory is when a history teacher brings me in the front of the class, closes the door, and says to the class, Ruben, you're a big, strong guy. You would have been the perfect slave. There are no words regarding this. My TA thought I plagiarized a paper based on the quality of writing reporting me. I showed the professor my revision history and he apologized, said I should take it as a compliment. Then he asked if I had ever considered an English PhD. In medical school, when I struggled with neurology as a first-year student, I was told you should accept this isn't your thing and you should accept your poor performance, while countless white students were offered one-on-one tutoring. When I told my medical school appointed advisor that I was in my second term as being our medical school class president, he responded, "It's so hard being a white male in medicine now that they are giving away our leadership spots to people like you." I was reprimanded by the dean for advocating that the hiring committee I was on interview a prospective Black applicant. The dean said that it was because I was engaging in behavior inconsistent with community norms, and I replied, "Ain't I part of the community?" And this is just to echo what I said before. If you're white and you're incredibly uncomfortable with reading, seeing, and hearing our stories of racism and anti-Blackness, imagine feeling like that every day of your life. And so this is a famous person on Twitter. Her name is Dr. Raven, the science maven. She's describing how someone had threatened to call the police on her because they thought she was a student trying to steal mail, and they did not believe her faculty ID was real. And they said, "Well, you don't look like you could work here." Another instance she describes showing up early for work on her first day as an assistant professor of biology, as someone handed her a mop and a broom, telling her she had come early to clean the floors. And they thought she was a new custodian, but she had a full suit on. And she responds, "Why didn't I say anything?" When we experience systematic mistreatment and oppression for our entire lives, for generations, these events occur and we internalize the trauma. Fighting back and using our voice is a learned process for some. Many still haven't found their voice. This is a person, Cassandra Estratuver. She's an evolutionary and developmental biologist at Harvard, and she's describing how every time one of us is rejected, beat down, dismissed, ridiculed, or murdered, I question why I'm still in academia. That means I ask myself this question every day, many times a day. I love science, but justice is more important, and yet it never comes. I answer my question by asking myself if today will be the day that another Black scientist leaves the field, is pushed out by the toxicity that we have to wade through every day so we can be productive and just think about science. I answer not today. I ask myself if today will be the day if there is one fewer senior Black academic available to reach out and stand up for and be visible for Black students and trainees. I answer not today. It usually costs more than I think I have in me, but so far I still say not today. And so this is my friend, Dr. Bianca Jones-Marlin. She's a neuroscientist at Columbia University in New York. This was a time that she was still a postdoc there, but I want you to hear her words. And she was reaching out to other Black academics that may feel they do not have anyone to hear their own voices. So just listen to what she has to say.
Hi, my name is Bianca Jones-Marlin. I'm a postdoc in neuroscience. And I want to speak to my Black scientist colleagues, grad students, trainees, the Black students in the community. I want you to know, and this is because I feel like there have been times where I need to be told this, that your presence in science is important, that your purpose in science is seen, and that you are essential in your communities, in the scientific community, in the world as a whole, to make the world a better place. I remember maybe 2 years ago, during another obvious blatant stream of racial injustice, that I had no one to reach out to that I thought would understand just the heaviness of the situation. And I had to sit through lab meeting while people were happy-go-lucky when we found out earlier today that someone was murdered unjustly. A Black person was murdered unjustly. And there's no comment said. I felt like if I was to bring it up, I would be burdening other people with something that was specific to me and not specific to us as a whole, as a country as a whole. And that feeling is heavy, and I think it's unnecessary, which is why I want to make myself available to you. Send me a message. I'm here to hear your stories. I'm here to hear the way you feel about the situation. I'm here to sit with you in silence about the situation. I know it's harder now because we're not sitting in the back of a conference room feeling this heaviness and being able to slunk down in our seat and ignore it. We're feeling it on Zoom when people are looking at our face and we're looking at theirs and talking about the easiness of their day when we have this extra burden, this transgenerational burden on us. So I'm here to hear your stories because I get it. Because I know that your stories aren't a paranoia, because I've been there. So your stories of being locked out of your faculty housing because someone decides you don't live there, and so they close the door in your face until security comes. I know, because I've been there. When people decide to videotape you for no reason and call you aggressive because of something someone said behind you or something that has nothing to do with you, and they think that they can put that on you. It's not being paranoid. I know, because I've been there. When people directly attack you or question your presence because of the fact that you're Black, and for no other reason, and not looking at your resume and not looking at other reasons why you are there in science to do excellent work, but making an assumption based on your appearance. It's not a paranoia. I get it, because I've been there. And so I want to make myself available to you, to be there for you. And to those who are well above and beyond where I am in science as a postdoc, I would love to hear from you too, because I think it is essential to have that community right now, to know that, yeah, that we're important, that we matter.
And so I hope you all could see her tears and hear her words. And this graphic that you see is just what she's experiencing all the time. When people are just judging her, thinking that she's always complaining, or even if this is making you uncomfortable, please understand that I lived being uncomfortable my entire life, not knowing if I will be respected as a scientist because I'm a 6'3" Black man, not knowing if I'm going to go to a conference and someone would call the police on me because they've never seen a 6'3" Black man have a PhD in optics. So certain things that it goes through your head regarding when you enter into a predominantly white space, not knowing if you're going to be welcomed and accepted and valued and cherished there. If I can bring it full circle to Nicole Hannah-Jones, she says this is the psychological bomb of the race caste system in America. If you're Black and couldn't overcome every obstacle to pull yourself up, is because you're lazy and did not want to work hard. If you're Black and you managed to be successful, it's because of affirmative action and you did not earn it. And she feels that the failures and the success that Black people go through are blamed on the exact same thing, your Blackness. However, there is hope because of communities like Optica, because this was a statement that was put out by the leadership, by the Optica president and the CEO, regarding what happened to George Floyd and how they acknowledged the pain that they felt as a result of what happened. And that really, it has a lot of weight behind it. And also, a lot of things that Optica is doing is number one, they developed the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Rapid Action Committee, which in response to the systemic racism and violence, which was on display during the summer. And they were trying to develop recommendations for programs to support and increase the numbers of Black scientists and engineers, and not just increase the numbers to retain the numbers. But one monumental thing that happened just a couple of weeks ago, Optica announced their first ever inaugural class of Amplified Scholars. These are 15 young Black professionals, young Black students scientists and engineers, they are having the full support of Optica now, regarding moving forward, regarding everything that they want to accomplish, not just regarding some financial support, but mentorship and professional development. This is huge. This is so awesome that Optica has established this. And I just hope that it will continue on in the future. And also, I did a podcast with Optica last year regarding some of my own colleagues regarding our experiences, how we overcame our challenges and adversity. I'm hoping it will be released soon because I really would like for you all to hear that. But I also want to share a couple other images of other Black scientists in optics. We have Dr. Christy Hendon. She's an associate professor at Columbia University. One of my friends, Dr. Desiree Whitmore. She's a science communicator at the Exploratorium in San Francisco. We have Dr. Mayatu Bell. She's the post lab director at Johns Hopkins. And we also have one of my colleagues, Dr. Joshua Burrow. He's a recently christened PhD in optics, and he's at Brown doing his postdoc. This is my friend George. He is at the University of St. Andrews in the United Kingdom. And this is also one of my colleagues, Dr. Kimani Toussaint Jr. He is at Brown as the Associate Dean, Senior Associate Dean, and he's also from Philadelphia. So I had that connection with them as well. So there are plenty of Black scientists doing excellent work in the field. So how to be a Black ally, how to be an ally for your Black colleagues. First of all, we want you to care about us, to care about our well-being, and then listen to us. We don't want you to disregard any of our experiences because it did not happen to you or your particular social circle. We want you to listen to our experiences and want you to have empathy regarding everything we have gone through. We would like for you to educate yourself on the history of Black optical scientists and HBCUs, and particularly my next project will be the hidden figures of optics and photonics. If you remember the movie Hidden Figures, talk about the hidden figures of what was called the calculators or computers, which were women, Black women at the time doing math at NASA. And it was just a phenomenal movie, but I want to make sure that we all understand there are more people behind the scenes that a lot of people do not realize that have contributed a lot of things in the field of optics over the years. We want you to acknowledge your own biases, and we want you to work earnestly to correct them. We all have biases, but we need to be honest with ourselves and say that this is wrong and we need to fix this. We will want you to fund us, support us, and to cite our work, and to nominate us for high positions with equal pay as your own. Please stand up for us and speak up and advocate for us, both publicly and behind closed doors. And even though I am an exception here, please don't just invite Black scientists to speak about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Invite them to talk about their own research as you would a respected colleague. And when you see someone doing something wrong to another person, please do not stay silent. Please do something about it. And so there are other opportunities that are out there. I'm on the board for the what's called the PARA program, which is partnering to advance imaging research for underrepresented minority students. And this is mainly we're implementing a new model to develop a more diverse scientific workforce, mainly in imaging. We were trying to establish more collaborative research teams containing a majority Black imaging scientists. And if you want to have an internal report by the American Institutes of Research regarding the Fisk Vanderbilt Bridge program, you can show a lot of the results that has been published in that report, which includes that African American students, they are 30%, they have 30 percentage points, and Hispanic students 38 percentage points more likely to graduate than the national STEM average. Black and African American students earning the master's during the Bridge program, they additionally go on to earn a PhD at a rate that is 75% higher than the national STEM average. So there are programs that are out there that are doing good work to advance Black people and to amplify Black voices. And so there are different resources that you can have. I can put this in the chat for you all. Now, this is something that you all really need to do your own research on, because there are a lot of things that I had not said but needs to be known, and a lot of these resources have the information for you. And on one final note, I'd like to share an experience I had in 2016. I was at the SPIE Optics and Photonics Conference in San Diego, and I was at the town hall meeting. There was a question that was asked to the CEO at that time, Dr. Gene Authors, and the question was asked, how can we advance optics outreach and optics awareness to third world countries? And he said that even before we go into third world countries, we need to reach the inner city Black and Latino communities first. That was huge for me, because I thought that I was the only Black American at the conference, and I came from the inner city, and people have written off kids in the inner city as being too unintelligent or not having the propensity to learn complex science. They just need the consistent encouragement and the opportunity. So I would like to thank you all for listening to me in this past hour. If you'd like to follow up with me, this is my email at Boston Electronics, also my Twitter page. And also please follow us if you want to know more about Black in Photonics at Black in Optics, and also follow us on the hashtag Black in Photonics. And one final image I'd like to share with you all. It took the mathematics of a Black woman for all of us to reach the stars. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, feel free to share.
Well, thank you so much. That was an incredibly moving talk. I totally difficult to hear sometimes, but really important message to receive. So yeah, I think we'll open it up to questions. I'd actually like to start with a question. A lot of your talk was focused on the systemic racism in the academic community. Can you talk a little about sort of where that stands in corporate America, where you get a lot of sort of mealy-mouthed statements about commitments to diversity, but do you see more action, better results, or is it?
Well, particularly everything that I shared was sort of blended with both academic and industry, but definitely in that in the matter of fact, I'm gonna go back and put some of the resources there, because there's a study by the American Institute of Physics. They developed the Team Up Task Force. They tried to elevate representation in physics and astronomy. There's a lot of, I would say, data regarding what people have gone through in academia and in industry. So I just want to put that there for everybody to see. But pretty much, you know, it's like for industry, you know, it's hard because sometimes you don't feel you feel that you don't have in particular colleagues to that have that particular background as you have, and so it's hard to connect with people. For me personally, I sometimes I know that I am the first or the only you know, person of African American descent in a particular circle. So I just take it as stride as to open the door for other people to come behind me. But particularly with my experience in Boston Electronics, this is my first job outside of academia, and so you know, I still have a limited experience, but I still see the same appearances, you know, from when I was in academia as well. So this is just for me to be at a position to try to promote change in both worlds.
All right. Other questions?
I see David raising. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. But which one? Which one?
Oh, okay. My question to you, Michael, I guess my question to you, how did you just decide that you wanted to get a PhD? You know, I mean, did someone actually, well, did your parents forces you, challenge you, or how did you decide that, hey, I wanted to get a PhD?
No, so my mother doesn't have a college degree.
Okay.
This was a personal decision of my own, mainly because I felt that I wanted to be an image of hope for people, to say that they have come from my particular neighborhood in inner city Philadelphia, and they can also go the distance to earning a PhD. Plenty of times where I was told to quit because they, it wasn't, they thought that I couldn't, succeed or, learn as fast as I should. But I knew that I wanted to do this because of someone else that will be in my same position later on down the line. Someone else who's going through the same type of adversity as me. And I want to let them know that, that it is possible to succeed, to never give up. And so this is the reason why I stuck with it all this time, and the reason why I'm a PhD right now.
Good. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
I have a related question. When did you
Yes.
first realize that you were interested in science and math?
Oh, it was definitely at the Franklin Institute. When I first went there as a child, I just loved all of the exhibits. I think my favorite one was I forgot, was the space exploration exhibit during that time. I wanted to become an astronaut. Yeah, I so wanted to become an astronaut. So I love space science growing up. Actually, so if I can share, one of the inspirations at the time was Guy Bluford. Guy Bluford at the time was the first African-American astronaut to go up in space. And he is also from Philadelphia, from West Philadelphia. So I had that connection right there. Said, wow, someone from my own city can earn a PhD and go up to space. That is so awesome. And so that just, I never lost that childlike wonder about learning. I was always, inquisitive. I always loved asking questions. Always wanted to know how things happen the way they do, and for me to to be at a position where I could just continue to grow as a scientist, it just like things are always. I'm always curious. It's a healthy curiosity is what I've had all this time.
Sure. That's great.
I just have a funny question / comment. There is, I think it's a play in Central Square, Nerds of Color. And I think it plays like through early next week. And I just wondered if you had seen it or knew anything about it. I'll put the link in the,
Yes.
I only found out about it recently, if you had any comment. And so that's kind of a comment, but one of my questions is, how do you help kids? Like, it's one thing if you've already decided, and Optica has for young scientists and engineers, but everything I know about, I'm a PhD chemist, and there were no women in the field when I started. You have to get kids interested in going, and how do you do that? so one comment, and I'll put the funny link in the chat to the play. I don't know if
Okay.
you've seen it, but hang on here.
I have not heard of that play, but I will definitely, check it out. One of the things that we started during my graduate years was actually mainly because we were, a part of SPIE and OSA at the time. We had to go and do, optical demonstrations in the city. And so we would go to the middle schools, to the elementary schools, or even the science fairs, and do optical demonstrations for the kids. And just to see their eyes light up when we would show them diffraction goggles and seeing how the white light can be split into the colors of the rainbow, that excites them so much. And so I always love doing that. So always thinking about just going into the schools and just continuing to show the original optics concepts to kids. And for me particularly, I like doing outreach on social media. I have a TikTok, and we're able to do optics demonstrations, and just for the general populace, just to get people interested. And so there's always certain things that you can do to get the kids interested. But I totally agree. It starts there at the young age.
Thank you. I have one other comment. A faculty colleague of mine, Donna Nelson, actually is a registered member of one of the Native American tribes, and she got very involved with, statistics or a lack thereof of Native Americans on, faculties and visibility as well. Anyway, she's at the University of Oklahoma. I don't know how much she's doing with it, but I know at one point when she gave a talk here at Brandeis, Anita Hill, who also had been at the University of Oklahoma, knew her and had her give her that talk at Brandeis to a group of students, and I went. So you might reach out and find similar people with. There are other people with other backgrounds that are underrepresented, not to take away from your talk, which I found, very, very interesting. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I see David.
Thank you for the talk, Michael. You said that you were initially led to science through a museum tour that you took.
Yes.
Are there many programs now to do similar things, possibly more one-on-one with role models or mentors at the junior high or even elementary school level? Because it seems like that's where you kind of have to start. As you said, you were pretty young when you started, and that seems like the time to look people and children.
Yes. So the PAX program, what I described, it starts at the middle school age. I don't know if there is a program here in the New England area, but I could definitely give you the contact information for the people in charge of the PAX program, and they could share with you if there are any other programs like themselves in other places.
I was thinking something like, the Museum of Science and other such institutions in this area.
Yeah.
It seems like an appropriate thing.
Yes, definitely.
Have you been in touch with any of those?
No, not yet. No, not yet.
They've been in touch with you. Where's more?
No, not yet. If anyone has any connections to the Museum of Science, I would love to talk with them.
Alan, did you have a question? I saw your hand up for a moment.
I think you're muted, sir. We can't hear you.
He's unmuted. Alan, we're not able to hear you, even though you're unmuted. Not sure why. No, now you're muted.
But can you write your question in the chat?
Yeah.
Let's try this. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. High tech. I'm a former college president, and one of the things I noticed in your talk, you were talking about the DEI positions that exist now in all colleges, academic institutions, and corporations, and they're almost always Black women.
Mm-hmm.
And my question was, especially given the earliest example you gave of the application study that was done, which I found fascinating, which I intend to, by the way, replicate in my own institution, is that is that a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, certainly it probably gives students or employees a feeling that they're somebody that's easier to access. But does it denigrate the position to some degree by people who say, oh, they only got that position because they're Black women? And I'm not sure there's an easy solution to that, but it's an interesting question.
Well, of course, it's always a double-edged sword because for me, I see it as a good thing because, like I said, a lot of people, they view Black women as less hireable than others. And so seeing them at those positions is a huge boost for the morale. But at the same time, I would like to see Black men also step up and be in the position as well. But also, exactly what you said, people say that they got that position mainly because they're a Black woman. And I say that, I don't think that people really understand that it's not just about, having like a Black face. You need to have the credentials and the background and the wherewithal and the wisdom to do that particular role. I wouldn't say that having being Black is it would say it's a hindrance. It's an asset. It is completely, awesome that they have the particular positions so they can, be, like I said, that image of success that other people can see to hold the door open for other people. And the more they fight to have more positions open for not just other Black women, for Black men, I think it's going to really help move the society forward. So I think for people who say that it's only because they're Black, they're just stuck in their own form of thinking. And they really need to understand that, it's not a detriment, for to have Black skin, even at the position. I really see it as my greatest asset.
Thank you.
I have another question about hiring and our ability to reach people at folks like at Delaware at Oscar. I'm embarrassed to say I had no idea that there was an optical institute at a historically Black college or in university before tonight. And I think that speaks to the fact that we often hire out of the networks we came from. I certainly, always think in terms of Arizona and Rochester for optics. Is there anything that Optica is doing or ways that you would suggest to integrate our sort of our hiring and bringing in talent from more of the historically Black colleges and universities, which are producing excellent candidates?
Yes. Please reach out to different HBCUs that have a lot of the talent pool that you need. There are definitely people out there that are really capable in doing excellent work. It just, like you said, a lot of people, they just stick with what they know. They stick what has been done before. But at the same time, you're missing a whole demographic of people that are qualified, and it goes into the invisibility aspect. You don't necessarily see any of the images of people being successful because sometimes they feel that they're being overlooked, or if they feel that I don't have a particular on my CV, I didn't graduate from Harvard or MIT or Princeton, all of a sudden my CV is mixed. But you can't think that way because of the fact that HBCUs, they value education and intelligence so much. They don't want to, they really they drive the notion that your Black skin should not be an excuse of not succeeding. And so I would suggest reaching out to different HBCUs if you're able to, I can, definitely help out with that. Just have someone go to the campuses, be present at the campuses, and consistently go to the campuses all the time. The students will warm up to you because it sees that you are consistent and you desire them, and not just a sprinkle or even just like on like one or two, and then you say you're promoting diversity. We want you to hire more of us. It just more so just I would say yes, you are pressing the envelope to things that are very, I would say, uncomfortable, because a lot of people who have done that, they're stepping out into new adventure, because not a lot of people do that. But I think that more so you do that, the more enriched the company will be as a whole, because you want to have people be a actual image of what an American company is all about.
I
It seems
have
to
a
me,
follow-up. Oh, sorry. I
oh,
have a follow-on question. How did you end up with the job you have then? Were you?
Well, is Fred still here? I think you left. So quite honestly, when I graduated in 2018, I was struggling to find a position. Unfortunately, because I always went to interviews. I never stopped going to interviews, but as soon as I stepped into the room and I started talking, all of a sudden they felt that there were other people that were more qualified than I was. Even though I have a PhD, I can learn on the job. I can learn things easily. So that was a really, really hard struggle to go through. But it wasn't too late 2020 when I saw that Boston Electronics had a position open for an application scientist. Now, for me, I like to talk to people as I'm doing now. I like that human interaction with people. I don't necessarily like being locked in the lab as an optical scientist. I did that when I was in grad school, but for my particular career being in industry, I like that talking with people, the interaction. So when I applied, they responded back to me. We had a great conversation, and the people there at Boston Electronics, they really are genuine. They really want to help people regarding their projects and the research that they do, and they spend time with the customers that they talk to really help them what they would have to do. And so I just felt that being there would be a great foundation for me to have my start. And so I just give them full props for giving me a chance.
I was going to say about the historically Black colleges that societies like Optica and SPIE could be giving them some publicity in whatever widely read publications they have, like OPN and the equivalent from SPIE.
Yes.
I don't think we see that kind of thing, and so we're not so familiar, as Josh says, we're not aware of a lot of these programs.
Yeah, so like I said, there are I would say, I believe there's still a chapter at Delaware State, but if it's not, I will hope that people will continue to reach out to them, so we have some sort of, I would say, advancement of the awareness, so people will know what's going on. And even though Delaware State is only one that has optics program, there are people who are doing optics, other people at Norfolk State University, at Howard. I want to say Tuskegee, I'm not sure, but definitely Fisk. And I like saying that because I know I know the environment. So you can definitely reach out to them. I can definitely give you the contact information for my advisor at Delaware State and at Fisk, if you can get something rolling.
Yeah, that's great. But you might be able to influence Optica.
Yes, that's why I'm an ambassador.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like something like Peter was suggesting, have maybe a regular column in OPN, and it reaches a much larger audience than any local section like ours. Your advisor, Fisk, yeah.
That's a thought. That's awesome. So I'm gonna write that down, put that in the thought, see if I can reach out to people in OPN. All right. Any other questions, anybody?
Okay, great talk. Thanks so much for giving it.
Yeah, thank you, Michael.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank
for
you.
Speaking to us.
Thank you.